Now let's go to Aishah Hasnie. She's at the White House. Hi, Aishah.
Hey, Dana, good morning to you. And some breaking news out of the White House this morning. They are pushing back hard on this Reuters report this morning that claims that the Iranian supreme leader allegedly said that the enriched uranium that is inside the country right now will not be allowed to leave as part of any peace agreement or nuclear deal. That would have complicated these talks by a lot. It would have really ticked off Israel, but the White House is pushing back on this. They say that Reuters report is not true. I'm told that, in fact, no decision has been made on that particular issue about the enriched uranium, what happens to it. No determination has been made either way, and that report is not true. Also, yesterday, President Trump warning Iran that the U.S. military is ready to go if they do not give him the right answer soon.
We're in final stages of Iran. We'll see what happens. We'll either have a deal or we're going to do some things that are a little bit nasty. But hopefully that won't happen.
Meantime, Pakistan's interior minister arrived in Tehran again yesterday to hold talks with the president there. Axios is reporting that Qatar and other regional allies, they've been working to refine this peace proposal to bridge any remaining gaps between the two sides, hammering out things like commitments from the Iranians on their nuclear program and also how the U.S. might unfreeze any Iranian funds in return. Meanwhile, Israel is pushing back on reports that Trump held a dramatic and intense phone conversation with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this week, who would rather see strikes continue. The president says Netanyahu is going to do whatever he wants him to do. Meantime, we're also seeing new polling coming out of Fox News here. U.S. military action against Iran. 60% of respondents oppose it, and 58% of respondents say the cost of living is now their top economic worry, as the average price of unleaded gas is now above $4 a gallon in every single state across the country as we head into this very busy holiday travel weekend. Dana?
Aishah Hasnie at the White House with full of news today. Thank you so much.
So, Dana, up here on the big board, you can see the U.S. military in action boarding a ship this week. Just Wednesday, in fact, called the Celestial. U.S. Navy there boarding that ship. Remember what the military has told us. No one can go in or out of Iranian ports. So come on over here to the map, and we'll update you on what's happening here. This is the blockade line, just as a reminder. From the tip of Oman to the border between Iran and Pakistan, that's where the U.S. Navy has told us that no ship can go in or out if you're going in and out of an Iranian port. This is the choke point here in the Strait of Hormuz. Let me clear this off and advance it to our next screen here. The naval assets are still in place. They are substantial too. They have not lightened up throughout this ordeal of the past 3 months. What you're seeing on here, a lot of lines, I know it. Focus on the green and then the yellow. First the green. These are vessels that are entering the Persian Gulf from the east, okay? It appears from this map that 16 of them have gone through with passage. Some are going around those small islands that Iran demanded. Others seem to be going just a bit south of that. The yellow lines, rather, is the western travel that is moving through the Gulf. The point of showing you this is that there is movement through the Gulf, through that choke point, even as we speak today. This, however, is what the Iranians are now saying, and Ashley referred to this in the reporting there from the Middle East. This area right here in blue, this is what the Iranians had controlled prior, and now they're calling for this controlled maritime zone, which would, according to the Iranians now, they would extend this zone to the east and to the west, which would give them extensive control over the Strait of Hormuz. We'll see whether or not that lasts. We'll see whether or not the U.S. military has another vote in that particular statement from yesterday. Rebeccah Heinrichs now, Hudson Institute senior fellow. Rebeccah, welcome to our coverage. Top of mind for you right now, what next?
Well, first of all, I think it's really important. Your reporter was talking about the White House pushing back hard that from that Reuters report that the son of the supreme leader. So the images our viewers saw is the deceased supreme leader that Israeli and American strikes eliminated. But now we haven't heard much from the son of the supreme leader. If he is the one calling the shots, then there is no deal to be had because he is committed to the Islamic Revolution, and we are no closer to a deal than we were before Epic Fury began. So I think that that's really important. Second of all, if the Iranians, however, wanted the United States to resume military strikes, I don't really know how they would be behaving any differently. I mean, you see them now making increased demands. Bill, you just pointed out how they're now expanding the zone that they want to control of the Strait of Hormuz. That's a deal breaker for the United States and for our Gulf partners in the region. And they're also demanding that the United States pay reparations and lift sanctions. And so I think we're no closer to a deal. And I think President Trump, of course, is ready to initiate military actions again. I do think that that's the direction that we are headed.
General Jack Keane was on with Fox and Friends a little bit earlier. Let's watch him here.
Problem with the deal here is that we leave Iran bruised but intact. And they'll walk away from here citing and convincing themselves that they got the United States to back down. And as a result of that, we extend a lifeline to the regime for sure, for them to do what? To recover. But nonetheless, it is a lifeline to the regime that extends them for years to come. The next administration is going to wind up having to deal with them. That's not where we started.
Your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I mean, Admiral Cooper, of course, the head of Central Command, just gave some very compelling testimony days ago where he said that the Iranians do not have an air force anymore. They really don't have a navy. The United States is much safer now than we were before. But there is still the ability that this Iran regime has to coerce and compel the United States. And that cannot stand. And so I agree with the general there who's making the point that this is more than just about Iran. This is about the entire Middle East. It's about the United States finishing a job that it started, regardless of what anybody thinks about initiating Epic Fury. Here we are, and the Iranians are making increased demands. So this is, I think, we're headed again in the direction of military force. One last thing, President Trump, before Midnight Hammer, just a couple of days before he initiated, he was saying that he was still committed to diplomacy if the Iranians would come to the table. And he was really engaging in a deception campaign. I suspect that that's what we're in right now, and that there could be military activity within days, Dana.
I don't know what you thought about our Fox polling. We want to show what we found. Who's winning the war? We found 2/3 of Americans believe that the United States is at 65%. But then we asked how long will the war last? About a third say months at 38%. About a third say more than a year. I don't know what you read into that, Rebecca, but based on your first answer, if that report is right out of Tehran that the sun is calling the shots and this is going nowhere, that's what they suggested, right? Mushtaba is the one who said the nuclear material stays here. I think we need clarification of the White House and the Pentagon for further information on that.
Right, we do. And I'll just say, too, when it comes to polling, I really applaud President Trump for saying he's not going to look at the politics of this. He's going to do the right thing. And I am, if you look over time, good policy makes good politics. The American people will get behind the president when we win and when it feels like we're stuck. I mean, look, the military has clearly won on the military side of things, but you have to use the military victories to compel a political end where the United States is clearly victorious. And so I think that's why we need more military operations next, and I do think that the American people will then support that. But the Iranians cannot control the Strait. They can't have a nuclear weapon, and of course, if they do control the Strait, it means the Chinese control the Strait because they are the backers of the Islamic Republic.
True. Precious times.
All right, Rebecca, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.